And at this point in the game, once you have these two bases up as Protoss, what we see White-rA doing is great. Get all your geysers up incredibly fast. Whoopsie daisies, just unplugged my headphones. Hope we don't get a feedback loop. Alright, fantastic. What we don't want to have happen is to be caught at too low a tech level. So obviously we need to be teching up, we need to be getting our core, adding on warp gates, all smart stuff. But the reason I love getting all these gas geysers very, very early on is that sentries cost only gas. So we can actually begin making quite a few sentries and all our money stockpiles up so that we can afford all these gateways. We're still making stuff out of the buildings that can make stuff, and we conserve all our money because we are just using almost all of our gas. So, yeah. And of course, getting a stalker out early on to get some overlords to back off, always really good. So, in just a summary, White-rA's build, rush, get an expansion up, build a cannon, and then start teching and make sentries. See, look, there's a sentry being made. In these gateways, what are being made? Sentries! So easy. Really easy. Honestly, if you're a Protoss player, just really, seriously, do this build like almost every game. You'll be blown away at how solid and intuitive it feels. And there's a lot of other things that White-rA's doing that are just fantastic. So we're going to ignore this robotics facility for a moment. He has probes. Or there's the probe. Yeah, he has probes wandering about here. He's just building a pylon. Great place to build a pylon. He's going to be able to warp in here. He can do some sneaky tactics with it, and it's very unlikely to be scouted. Going into the opponent's base, I just want to note that this layer didn't really finish that long ago. Let's actually think about that. Let's actually back up a little bit, just so we get to see some timings. I'll actually pull my replay back a touch, hoping that it doesn't crash. Yeah. So, this is something that you should do in all your games, right? Notice that I focused almost exclusively on White-rA, and what am I doing right now? Well, I'm going to that layer because I want to check out some stuff, and then, okay, I'm going to stop right here and say, okay, this layer just finished, and then I'm going to go back to my base and be like, what's going on here? Okay, cool. When my warp gate is almost finished, that's when his layer is finished. So I can constantly check this cybernetics core and get an excellent sense of what my Zergy opponent is doing, thanks to just what's going on here. I haven't even scouted. I mean, honestly, look at the White-rA cam. This thing hasn't even begun making morphing into a layer, but still you can make these sorts of wild judgments on where you are in the game. So for instance, right now, I would think to myself, okay, time to build a cannon in my mineral patch. So that way I can deal with any sort of fast Mutalisk, because it's getting to be about that time. And of course, just some final chrono boosting to finish up the warp gate. And there it finishes. And so, again, this timing works out very nicely. We want to get our 4 warp gates up, and then we want to get our robotics facility. I personally prefer getting this robotics facility a little bit earlier, because I can rely on all these sentries I've been building to force field myself to safety. And then afterwards, I can end up getting Immortals or Colossi very, very quickly. But now this seems a little interesting that White-rA is pushing out here. This is a nice small little force. Anytime you have a decent amount of sentries, no matter what your other army composition is, if you have 4, 5, 6 sentries, you can move out and do little pokes safely because the force field allows you to retreat so comfortably. What else is White-rA doing that's brilliant here? This pylon, I think, is one of the smartest things, period. This is just phenomenal. This, to me, says, you cannot Nidus worm my base. I think another pylon should be placed here. Here's more pylons here. These pylons are good not only because it allows us to warp in, but also does a little bit of spotting. So I would like another pylon there. I think that really, in any game, you're going to have a standard 4 pylons at your rim. One here at this side of the base, at the bottom. One sort of here-ish, kind of covering this long flank, and then one in the far back right corner. So, I mean, for instance, if White-rA was here, I'd build a pylon here to keep an eye on stuff there. I'd build a pylon here, and then I'd build a pylon here. And then you can generally have one other one elsewhere. Very good, easy way to just stabilize. Because, again, it's trying not to lose a, dumb game here or there where a Nidus worms in, and instead trying to make sure that you are, sorry, I lost my train of thought. The way you become a really good player is by not losing dumb games like Nidus Worms just popping in your base without you knowing. You don't win games by having super fancy micro or incredible, unbelievable builds. You know, it's a lot of these very, very, very subtle things. So, of course, Observer popping out, doing a little bit of assistance. And this is also part of the reason why you do need to get a decent amount of Stalkers relatively early on, or do what I do and get a Colossi, or a Colossus really fast. This Nidus Worm on the cliff as Zerg is just really obnoxious. And what I love about this is that let's just look at White-rA's play for a moment. I think the only big thing I would go about is that there's no cannon in the mineral line here. Pretty vulnerable to Mutalisks, very easy to pop out some Mutalisks at this stage. But everything else about White-rA's play I love. I'm thinking about a Roach bust early on. No, there were sentries there, and there were some Zealots, and we did that delayed rush. Okay, we have this Observer, and we have a lot of sentries out, or excuse me, Stalkers out. Cool, we can shoot this from range. What about Hydros? We also had those sentries, and then we got 4 Warp Gates up, and we got a lot of Stalkers, so I think we're going to be good there. And now we do see the Colossus coming out, and that's great. And of course, why do we get this Twilight Council? Well, White-rA gets it for the upgrade. Now let's stop and think about this for a little bit, because this, I think, is a pretty important part of the gameplay. Why would he be getting that plus upgrade? And even if you can't think of a reason, try to, you know? Like, so often players will just upgrade because upgrading, you know? They're like, yeah, I'm going to upgrade. And the danger with this is that without mentally attaching a purpose to it, it's easy to forget about. Because, I mean, part of the reason why, you know, a lot of these top players don't forget to, you know, macro or to do this or to do that is because they know exactly what it's for, and they're constantly thinking, yeesh, I really got to make sure I get blank, you know? I mean, it's like getting lurkers in Zerg vs. Terran. I need to get lurkers so I don't die in the mid-game so I can actually make drones. Or Protoss vs. Zerg in Starcraft 1 and 2, I need to get that +1 upgrade so my Zealots kill your Zerglings in 2 hits instead of 3. That's huge. All of a sudden I need way less Zealots and I can crush Zerglings, all the better. But let's think specifically about +2 attack. What does that mean? Well, Zealots, you know, as long as I'm staying ahead of them in terms of this Carapace upgrade, then okay, good, then that works out nicely. But the main thing that I'm thinking of is the Colossus. The Colossus does 30 damage a shot now, and it shoots pretty fast. And Zerglings have 35 health. If you get the +1 upgrade, the Colossus does 34 damage, not quite enough. But if you get the +2 upgrade, it does 38 damage. Whoa, hey, we're now one-shotting Zerglings. I am now no longer need to worry about Zerglings. Fantastic. Why is this so awesome? Because, as a Protoss player, I can get the Colossus and get a lot of Stalkers and not lose really badly to mass Zergling. That's the real problem that a lot of Protoss players were having for some time, is that they would do this, I'm going to get a lot of Colossus because they're awesome, and then I need to get Stalkers to shoot down any air units, and also to support my Colossus. But Zerglings are giving me trouble. Well, hey, +2 makes Zerglings give you a lot less trouble. Your Zealots are better against them, your Colossus are better against them, you're better against them. I should work for a Dare ad or something like that. That was pretty good. Yeah, say no to drugs, say yes to +2 upgrades for Protoss. And also note that this sort of aligns with everything else we're seeing. Notice that this +2 upgrade's pretty fast. I mean, White-rA got the support bay right when he got the Twilight Council. That's an awfully fast +2 up. But, of course, it makes sense because this Colossus is going to pop out. Probably going to have 2 Colossi. And yeah, there's a talk going on here, but, you know, not the important part. You know, we're going to get another Colossus coming out. Great. We can do a little poking damage up here, make sure that we can manage our cliff a little bit better. But we're going to have about 2 Colossi when our plus upgrade finishes. And also, now that I've given this motivation for the plus upgrade, we now actually have a reason to use our Chrono Boost. I was recently playing this epic Protoss vs. Terran where I just wasn't using Chrono Boost that much. And I was noticing it in the game. Every time I remembered to Chrono Boost, I'd be like, I forgot to Chrono Boost. But if you recall what things are really important, it becomes easy to spend your Chrono Boost because you're actually constantly thinking, oh my god, I'm really, really, really late on Chrono Boosting. Oh god, I really need to get my +2 up, I really need to get my range up, that sort of thing. And now all of a sudden, look at White-rA, look at how low he is on Chrono Boost. This second Nexus is a little bit low, because if you have a whole control group of Nexuses and say Chrono Boost, Chrono Boost, Chrono Boost, it will suck it all from one Nexus before it moves on to the second one. Just one thing to note. And here's something that a lot of people, I think, feel uncomfortable about, and they really should be less uncomfortable about it. Why is this an excellent choice of expansion for White-rA's play? Well, it's the safest place on the map for White-rA, because look, here's his base, and I'm going to move out with an attack. Oh, cool, as long as I'm here, this expansion's defended. Very, very, very safe expansion. In fact, in these positions, I think Zerg is the race that's really going to be suffering quite a lot. So look at this army. It doesn't actually look very big. I mean, what? We have 10 Stalkers here. We have 2 Colossus, but they do almost have that +2 upgrade. And look, chrono boosting it again if we give reason for that chrono boost. If we put a lot of importance on